How's it going, guys? Yooper Basser here with you. Give you a little idea of what I was throwing down on Lake Washington when I was in Florida this year. Lake Washington is a very shallow lake, not a lot of cover, a little bit of reeds, a little bit of pads. Also has the St. Johns River flowing through it, and it's part of that system, southern part of it. Now, after the hurricane they had, this lake has changed quite a bit compared to past years when we fished it. The lake, we normally could go in there and there'd be mats of different vegetation that we could punch or flip. And this year a lot of that was all gone. So we were left with the little bit of cover that was in the actual lake. And that's what you'll see in the video. What we were targeting was isolated patches. Occasionally we'd get a fish from the actual bulk of the reeds, but for the most part it was finding those isolated patches. No big fish out of Lake Washington this year. Last year we got a 5 out of there. This year our biggest was probably 3 or 4, so nothing huge, but it was a lot of fun. A lot of days we'd get out there and we'd catch 15, 20 fish, so at least we're getting some numbers, nothing huge. So when I was targeting those isolated patches, what I was throwing a variety, three main setups. First, well, 2 of them were basically the same, one just weightless and then a little bit of weight on it. And what it was the Gambler Ace, so your standard stick bait from whatever company. And this, and the color they were chewing on that they really seemed to like was this green pumpkin and black swirl, it's called. What it is green pumpkin, obviously you can get that part. It's got black mixed throughout it, and then it's got some copper flake in it. And that seemed to really work well on that stained water of Lake Washington. Now I was throwing that weightless, and when I was throwing that weightless around the bulrush and the reeds and whatnot, I was throwing that on a 7-foot medium fast Ardent edge rod paired up with an Ardent Apex Grand. That's a 3-to-1 gear ratio. I try to keep everything I throw a 6 and higher, except for crankbaits. Sometimes I'll throw that on a 5, but for the most part, high-speed reels is what I throw. And so that was my weightless setup, the Ace. And I pair that up with a 4/0 extra heavy trapper hook. And for me, I just like that little 4/0. It just gives me a little more hook, and that's just personally what I like throwing with that setup. So occasionally when that wasn't working, I would step up, or if there was heavy winds, different stuff like that, whatever I felt like I needed to do, sometimes I would step up and throw a little bit of weight. You didn't need a ton because this is a shallow lake, so it just needed enough to give it a little more control in the wind when I was flipping, or just when I wanted to give it a little more fall rate. It seems like that's what they wanted. I'd step that up, I'd throw a little bit, like an 1/8 ounce tungsten on there, or sometimes 3/16. Those were the 2 sizes I used primarily when I was flipping those reeds and whatnot. And that was that green pumpkin black swirl, the black and blue glitter with a blue tip. Those were my 2 hot baits on Lake Washington. I was throwing that on 15-pound Pline tactical fluorocarbon. And when I was throwing it weighted, if I was throwing it really back and stuff, I'd step up and throw it on one of a different setup. And I'd throw that with probably on 50-pound braid. That's all I really have rigged up for braid. So it's probably on 50-pound braid and just tossing it way back in the nasty stuff, just making sure I get the fish out of there. So when I wasn't throwing the Ace, I'd change to the Gambler Super Stud, your fluke style bait, and there it is right there in the white lightning color, I believe it is. And I just worked that around the dead growth that was there and around the actual bulrush that was there. There you go. Rig that up on a 3/0, or yeah, I think that's a 3/0. 3/0 trapper hook, extra heavy as well. But that trapper hook right there, man, whether you're rigging it up with the Ace, the Super Stud, man, it was working great. I was having awesome hookups with those baits, paired up with the Trapper hook. And of course, when I was throwing that stuff, I was slathering it in my favorite Liquid Mayhem shad scent. Shad population down there, not something I have a whole lot of up here in actual Michigan, but down there you got the shad, baby. Throw the shad scent. But that's it, man. That's what I was doing down there, Lake Washington. Check it out. Video's gonna be releasing here real quick. This is just a highlight. This is what I was doing. Now watch for the video that's coming next.